So thanks for having me here. It's good. Everybody can hear me. In general, people can hear me very nicely. So I don't need the mic. If I need the mic, just tell me. Fine? Fine. Great. So I am Nicolas Frankel. For a long time, I've been a Java developer working in consulting. So going to customers, doing what they wanted, doing what they didn't want either, doing what they didn't even know they wanted. So who here is a consultant? Not that many. One. Wow, okay. Like in France and in Switzerland afterwards, there were a lot of consultants everywhere. And I had enough of that life because basically it's just like being a slave. And I mean, it's nice, you learn a lot, but after a while you understand that you always repeat the same things with the same results, like nobody cares. So now I go to conferences, I go to user groups. If you don't listen, that's fine. That's fine, I can live with that. A couple of years ago, I got interested in Kotlin. And now I work as a developer advocate for Hazelcast. Who knows about Hazelcast? Really? One person only? Okay, interesting. No, that's good. That's good. So who knows about Redis? Shit. Okay. Next time you think Redis, you will think about Hazelcast. Especially since we have a lot of integration points. But anyway, so basically our Hazelcast, the legacy product, is basically like the distributed data structures that Redis offers. But we have because we are written in Java, we have a lot of integration points with Java. So for example, if you are using Hibernate, you can use the level 2 cache. We have an integration with that. If you are using Jcache, we are an implementation of Jcache. If you use Tomcat, you can do session replication with Hazelcast. I mean, so next time, no Redis, Hazelcast if you are in Java. And recently, we provided a new product called Hazelcast Jet that does stream processing. But by leveraging Hazelcast in-memory data structure, basically we are like much faster than Kafka. Of course, there is a trade-off. We are not persisting, so it's in memory. So if you want to be very fast and you accept that you might lose some data, then think about it. Anyway, this talk is about Spring Boot. Since it's a Spring user group, I assume everybody here knows about Spring. Everybody knows about Spring Boot. Who loves Spring Boot? Yeah. So you come to a Spring user group, but you don't like it so much, huh? You like it just one bit. What do you like, Java E? Really? You come to a Spring user group and you say you love Java E over Spring. You are brave. I love you already. I did a lot of Springs projects, and I really liked Springs. But actually, when I started my Spring projects, what I told my team is, guys, go home, and I will create the POM. And I will check the right versions. And I will add the good dependencies. And then I will exclude the dependencies I don't want. And then I will create a use case because, I don't know, I need the internal view resolver for the GSPs. And I need to do it for every project. After 2 days, I told my team, come back, it's fine, you can start working. And then came Spring Boot. And now you know that you go to start.spring.io, you choose your dependency, everything is out of the box. That's pretty good. But people are never happy. I'm French, I know it. French people are never happy. They always find a reason to complain. I think that Spanish people are pretty the same, right? All Southern Europe, we are the same. Huh? We always need a reason to bitch. And people bitch against magic. Like, look, now my project starts in 5 minutes, but I don't understand how it works. Because everything is taken care of. And so, there is an issue. And I don't know if you know, like, Lucas Heder. He has created a site that bitches against annotations. Like, he provides an entity with 10 or 12 annotations. And yes, The problem with annotations is in the normal course of code, if you don't know what the code does, you open it in your IDE and you control-click to see the inside of the method. And if you don't understand inside the method, you control-click, and then you can go down the rabbit hole until you understand everything. The problem with annotations, at least the ones that I use in Spring right now, they are used by annotation processes. And you have no way from one annotation to understand by which annotation processor or processors it will be used. The only way is through Javadoc. So if the Javadoc is nicely done, they might write it, hey, this annotation will be used by this annotation processor. Spring does a pretty good job at doing it, but still, they might not always do it. Might be not that great, or perhaps you don't have the sources. You are just reading the bytecode, and not great. So an easy solution is to remove annotations. Easy, right? So that's what we are going to do. Fine with you? Good, because if it's not fine, I have nothing else to show you. OK, so here I've created a project with start.spring.io. Oh, who is familiar with Kotlin? I asked about Spring, but who is familiar with Kotlin already? OK. You prefer Java, right? You are like that guy you can. Yeah, OK, I understand. I will try to explain some of the stuff. If it's too dumb, just tell me I don't need to explain it. If it's too complex, tell me, and I will try to get slower, OK? So here I've created a project. The first thing that you can notice if you are not used to Kotlin is there is no real reason to put this method in a class. Because Java is an object-oriented language, right? Everybody knows about it. Everybody knows. You do object-oriented programming in Java, right? Right? You are not so sure. You feel there is a trap. Of course, there is a trap. Because in every Java project, at least when I was younger, now there are libraries for that, you need to create a utils class that acts upon a string or upon a date, because the API is not enough, or you always do the same stuff. And where do you put this method? In a class. But it's static. It's not object-oriented at all. But because Java tells you, I am an object-oriented language, you must put everything inside a class. In Kotlin, that's not the case. You have top-level functions. If you know Scala, same stuff. Kotlin was very good at stealing a lot of good ideas from other languages. First thing, main becomes a top-level function. And that's also semantically, we don't talk about methods in Kotlin, we talk about functions, even if they are inside classes. Second stuff, we have multiple classes per file. I mean, Kotlin makes it easy to create very, very small classes. Very small. This is a class. It would be completely stupid to require you to put such a class in a dedicated file. So you can put as many public classes as you want in the same file. Of course, now you have power. You have power to put all your classes into the same file, which might not be a great idea if you have 100 classes. But now you have the power. At least it looks nice. By default, the visibility of classes is public. So if you don't write the access modifier, the visibility modifier, by default it's public. In Java, it's package, but here it's public. So everything you see here is public. And you can put annotations, and everything is fine. We said that Kotlin is fun because to declare a function, you use the prefix, the keyword fun. Something that might not be apparent, especially since the latest IntelliJ versions, is that actually you don't need to type a lot of types. By default here, Kotlin understands perfectly well that here, since person_repository.findAll returns an iterable of person, the readAll method will also return an iterable of person. Like the Kotlin compiler is smart enough. Like in Java, you need to say person foo equals new person. Wait, no, since Java 11, you don't need to do that. Now you can say var person equals new person, but only for local variables, not for attributes. And if you return a person, you must tell that is function returns a person. Here, it's not necessary anymore. Is it too detailed, or everybody knows about that stuff? Okay, so I don't need to describe it further. That's fine. I have created, as I mentioned, a project. So actually, I have an application.properties. And since this is a REST controller, I will return REST stuff in JSON. And I will just nicely indent the outputs. And I'm using also Spring Data GPA. So I have this import.sql, which basically, at the beginning of the application, it will try to import it. Since I am using H2, every time I kill the JVM, I lose all my data. It's in memory. I don't care. And it will reinsert at the next run. So if I use this stuff, I will run it. And now I will curl it. And it gives me the 3 entities that I have created before. Spring Data GPA, Spring MVC, easy peasy. OK? And because I'm like, perfect. Great. Now, I hope this will be an interactive presentation. Where are there the more magic? Where is the more magic? Where are there the more annotations? Hey, this is an easy question, guys. This is an easy question. Which class has the most annotations? Controller. Controller is just riddled with annotations. You cannot do controller without annotation. I actually always prefer to like that my classes, that my beans are completely annotations free, and then I declare them as beans in my configuration class. But for controllers, I cannot do anything. So I will start with that. I will start to remove the annotations there, and I will, nope. I will create a bean, and since Spring 5, I have this router DSL. So now I will try to add the static stuff because it reads a bit nicer. And that's it. And I add another one. Like this is the first route, and then I have the other routes for everything. Good enough. So this one can replace this one, and the second one can remove the readAll one. Whoops. And now since this one is empty, I can remove it. Before, I don't remember which version, but before, the only way to use this functional DSL was to be reactive. Who already does reactive? Nobody? Webflux? Good. Probably you don't need it. Like they are pushing it a lot, but in general, it's like microservices. It's like a lot of stuff. It's good for conferences. It's good to put on your resume. But in general, you don't need it because it's hard to debug reactive. And if you are not using a cloud, if you already have all your infrastructure, you don't need to lower your consumption. Now, you have a dedicated Spring FN, Spring function. I don't remember the exact name, but you can use that with functional DSL with servlets. It's just the way that it's written. If I compile it again, and I'm using the dev tools, so normally it should, if either it's able to reload it or it restarts the whole application. Here it restarted not the whole application, sorry, but the classes. It still works. I don't know about you. Probably it's because I'm not used to that. For me, it's harder to read. But some people prefer it like that because I have removed 4 annotations and I had to add 1 for the beginning. So I have removed 3 annotations. It's not that bad. However, from like a pure design point of view, that's not so great. What we want is like to have this into a dedicated place so that we have like the routing that does only the routing and the logic, it's decoupled. So let's do that. I will create a handler, dedicated handler. And here, what I will do is, nope, not that. Here, I will create a handler inside. So it's a val handler, person handler. Everybody is happy with what I write in Kotlin? Good? OK. And now I can say handler function, and here I will say handler dot read one and pass it. And here I will say handler read all, and I need to pass it in all cases. And what? Yep. Now I recompile, it should do the same, exact same stuff. Yes, it works. I will try to. Perfect. It looks a bit better already. And now, what I want to do is actually, we are not leveraging Kotlin at all right now. We are just using the standard DSL for WebFN of Spring. What I want is to use Kotlin's niceties, extension function, everything. So instead of writing that, we can use a router. And this is the equivalent. But this leverages Kotlin. So I will replace it. I compile it again. And let's try if it works. Much better. Everybody's happy with that? Not so much, not anymore. That's the future, I'm sorry. Next is we want to remove the bean annotations. So I will create a beans method that actually uses that. So I will use the power of Kotlin DSLs that is provided by me again in the Spring framework itself. There is no additional dependency. Spring starter data GPA, Spring Boot starter, Jackson module normal, Kotlin, 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 the test, the Spring Boot dev tools. So only by using raw Spring, I have that. And here, I will just declare that. Good. That's nearly good. And now, here I have an issue. I need to pass in the repository. So first, how do I call this function? Here I can call this function by, I don't remember how it is, so I will probably need to apply something. Add application listener. No, not application listener. Apply this dot. I don't remember. That sucks. Beans. Yes, it is this. No? Nope. I will cheat. I will check. I don't remember. I don't remember. Nope. Nope. Here. Add initializers. Add initializers. Oops. Here. Too much cerveza. Here. I have one parenthesis too much, and here it probably must be this one. Nope. Here and here. Yes, finally. I got it right. Now I need this repository. So in normal Spring injection, what you would do is here, you would pass the repository here, and here you would pass the repository. The problem is, at this point here, there is no context. So we cannot have a handle on the repository itself. So it doesn't work. So I will do something magical. Are you ready for some more magic? This is magic. It compiles. The first time I saw that, I said, no, it doesn't work. It still works. So of course, I need to explain that, right? Yes, okay. So I will create a file called magic, because this is magic. So at least let's be frank about it. And here. So here, I will go step by step. If I had a handle on the context, I could do getBean. And then you pass in the class. And then it finds inside the context the bean that has this class, the unique bean that has this class. Correct? This is what you do in Java. In general, it's not acceptable to do getBean directly because you are doing dependency injection. But if you are a library, it's OK. You need somehow to get the bean. So far, so good. So that means that we don't need to actually here use the generic type because it's already passed here. Correct? Correct. So ref actually does exactly that. It does a context.getBean. Less magic already. Now the question is, how does it know that it should find a bean of the class person repository? That's the real question. You might know that in Java, if you use generics at compile time, in the bytecode, everything is gone. So that's the reason why you cannot have a list, a method that accepts a list of person and the same method with the same name that accepts a list of foo. Because with type erasure, they will have the same signature and Java will cry about it. Imagine that Kotlin could actually have reified generics. Imagine it. Then you would just say, hey, I pass the type person repository, and I don't need to pass it as an argument. Correct? If it would be the case. Well, Kotlin doesn't have reified generics. But you can pretend it has by not making the ref function like a call, but actually doing an inlining. So instead of being a call at runtime, it will copy-paste that at compile time. And then you can say that the generic is reified. And because it's not a call, it's fine, because at compile time, the type is known. And finally, here, well, it's super easy. Because at compile time, the person handler actually only accepts a bin of type person repository. So this is not necessary to tell the compiler, hey, I want a stuff of type bin of person repository. It already knows it. And that's done. Even better, you can go further and say, hey, I want to create a bin of type person handler. Here, I need to tell it it's a bin of type person handler, because otherwise it could be a type of anything. And then it will try to instantiate a bin of type person handler. It will check that there is a required argument in the constructor. It will take it from the context and put it there. And it's done. No more magic. So now we can remove this class. And here, now you understand how it works. What we can do is what we just need is actually nothing. Or what we could do is we could create a bin of type person handler. And then we say handler. Here, we say, hey, we need a type of a ref of type person handler. This is another way it could work. Like we create it explicitly here in the context, and we get a handle on it here. Everything works. Better like this or like the previous one? This one? This one? OK, so let's compile it, check that it works, and everything will be fine. Still works, still works. Perfect. How many annotations now? 1, because I need it, and 2, because I'm using them GPA. And, well, 3, actually. Who is happy with 3 annotations? Well, I already told you, yeah, I know you are Spanish people, I'm French, we are never happy. But let's say, who is more happy now than before? 1, 2, 3, 4, 4.5? Should we go further? Should we remove all annotations? Should we remove all magic? Yes? So you are not so happy. You want to remove everything. So I won't code it. What I will do is actually I will use the power of Git. And now, you should weep. Because everything is completely different. Everything. So first, I have to remove the annotations. So no Spring Data GPA, no GPA at all. What we can use, if we want to be completely and fully functional, is something called R2DBC. Like I told you previously, before, Webflux was the only way to be functional with Spring. And they added the servlet way too. But if you want to be functional from the database, you must be reactive. There is no other choice. If you don't like it, I'm sorry. That's how it is. I have to add an additional dependency called Kofu. I will get back to it later. And I need to add the driver to be reactive on H2. Like before, H2, the database was H2, the driver was embedded in the database jar. You used JDBC, everything was fine. Now, you need another API to access the data. And not all databases have such drivers. Like Postgres, of course Mongo, because by default it's not a real GDPC, well, it's not a GDPC database. But for a SQL database, the only one I know, it's Postgres. Postgres, you have a reactive driver. And they are trying to do reactive drivers for everything. And notice that now it's not a Spring Boot application anymore. Actually, the code is completely different. You have just one main function. The rest is the same, but now no IDE, no entity. And the person repository is not an interface anymore because it was magic. Even if there were no annotation, it was magic. Like the implementation was created at runtime for you. Now you need to declare everything. You need to declare how to do a select, but also you need to declare how to create the schema. Because now there is no way Hibernate can know, or whatever framework, GPF framework you are using, can deduce the schema. Like it's a simple class. There are no more entities, so you need to declare everything. And inserting, why we don't have no insert? Of course, you add inserts, you just didn't notice it. Like, we need to initialize the database with data. The stuff that we did before with the SQL file that was handled for us, now we need to do it by hand. And everything uses a specific DSL. So let's start this standard Kotlin application. Now it's not a Spring Boot application anymore. Now the good stuff is that it starts super fast. Like really, really fast. And on the not so great side, I lost the formatting. Remember application.properties? No magic. You wanted no magic, we have no magic. Now, on the good side, however, we have, sorry? What is super slow? The building, yeah, because I'm not using the latest Kotlin version compiler with the incremental stuff. So, or perhaps my computer is already too old. Because I'm using DSL, I don't need to check the documentation. That's the benefit. Of course, no more dev tools, no more class loader magic. Everything is by hand. You should restart it manually. Now I have, again, the formatting. So 1 year ago, I think, there was something called Springfoo, and there were 2 options. One for the real cool people who use Kotlin already, called Kofu, and one for the old people who still use Java, called Jafu. This was made by this guy, Sébastien Deleuze, but basically after a couple of months, he decided that using this DSL with Java was no real benefit. Like, it's not easy to create a good DSL with Java. Whatever goes now into this Springfoo stuff is experimental. So the latest, like where you only have a single function, single main, that is experimental because it's Springfoo. The point is, it's an incubator. It will be like a sandbox where Sébastien can propose stuff, community will use, we have feedback, back and forth, and if somebody, or if a lot of people agrees that it should be used by Spring, just like the bin DSL and the root DSL, it will find its way into Spring. So again, it's experimental. If you use it in production, don't complain. Of course, you will do it, but. So those are all the points. Everything should be explicit. No magic involved. No class loading, no CGLib. Everything will be involved. The benefit of that is that since everything is explicit for you, everything can be explicit for the GraalVM native image ahead of time compilation. You know about GraalVM native image? So, yes, no? Should I detail it? Nope? Yes? Guys, I thought that people from Southern Europe, they were very interactive. I feel like I'm Finland right now. Should I detail it or not? Yes. Yes. OK. So basically, you might know about GraalVM. GraalVM is just a big bag of stuff where you have like a GDK, but it also proposes you a framework to implement your own language so that if you have a language implementation inside of GraalVM, and there are already some out of the box, they can interoperate. So with GraalVM, you basically can call JavaScript, or from JavaScript, you can call Java. You have Python, you have Ruby, you have R, and you can implement your own. So you have this like cross-platform stuff. And you have another feature called Substrate VM, and it allows you to take bytecode, jar or class, and to create out of it a native executable. There are a lot of restrictions on that, like reflections. Hey, if you create a native executable, doesn't work. Class loading doesn't work. So if you create for you something that is explicit, where you can follow all paths, then the ahead of time compilation can do the same, and you can have a very, very fast native executable. The benefit of that is that if you use a JVM on serverless, it's not a good idea, because it takes a lot of time for the JVM to warm up, and so you have hacks on AWS or whatever to ping your serverless function regularly to keep it warm. I mean, that's crazy. Serverless means that there should be as many as needed, and when you don't need them, they just die, and they don't cost you nothing. The problem with the JVM, if you need like a very fast response time, it takes time to spin off. It's not great. Also, the JVM takes a lot of memory compared to a native executable. On the opposite, for long-running processes, it's really good. Like for a lot of benchmarks, the JVM platform is better than a native executable because it's able to adapt its code to the workload. So it keeps the bytecode, it transforms the bytecode to native code that is adapted to the workload, something that actually native executables cannot do. Then you compile them statically. So in very specific cases, it's better to have a native executable. It's not to say that you should always do that, but in some cases it's interesting. And this is one way to easily achieve that. So now he's working on the 0.3 version. So normally, with some luck, soon you will have JDBC support, not Spring Data support, not Spring Data GPA support, only JDBC support. Because you didn't want magic, and GPA has a lot of magic involved. So if you go away from this presentation, and if you are already using Kotlin and Spring Boot, and you don't like annotations, what you can start with is you can like move all your controller to roots, functional roots, using the Kotlin's roots DSL. You can remove all your beans annotations and replace them with the functional DSL by declaring them like I showed you. If you want to go the extra mile, which is your responsibility, then you remove a lot of stuff, you put Kofu, and you need to go reactive, whether you like it or not, whether it's necessary or not. Happy debugging. In the end, Spring Boot loves Kotlin. You can read my blog, you can follow me on Twitter, and you can check the repository for yourself so you can try to do with it. There is one commit per step that I've showed you, so I think it's very, very easy to follow.